All right. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to be presenting building a CPG brand on Amazon, and we're going to be talking about strategy and compliance. My name is Heather Bustos, and this is my co-host, Sania, and she'll be taking on the strategy side while I'll be taking on compliance. So just to start with a little bit of an introduction, like I said, I'm Heather Bustos. I'm the founder of Bustos Law Group. We are compliance counsel for brands on a mission. We essentially help brands in the food, supplement, cosmetic, and medical device spaces with FDA compliance so that they can complete their missions. We help pretty much everyone in the supply chain, from importers to distributors to manufacturers and brand owners. Some of the services we offer are things like label reviews, registrations, GMP compliance audits. And even if you get into trouble, we can help with recalls, warning letters, and import alerts. So pretty much full service for those CPG brands who need FDA compliance services. And now I'll turn it over to Sania to introduce herself.
Thanks, Heather. Hi, everyone. I'm Sanya. I'm the founder of Prima Mode. So Prima Mode is, a full-service Amazon-focused growth agency where we help emerging brands scale profitably across Amazon and beyond. A lot of the work that we do is really bridging the gap between D2C and marketplace strategy and making sure Amazon isn't just a sales channel, but a real growth lever for brands of all sizes. We've worked with brands across supplements, baby, beauty, and just better for you CPG categories as well. So it's firsthand seen what kind of moves the needle. And yeah, just really excited to share all my learnings from the field with brand founders, investors, and consultants who've joined us here today. So yeah, I think that sounds like a great intro for the first slide. Kind of moving on to the next slide. What we'll do today in today's webinar is, we'll divide it into two halves. So first, I'll address, the Amazon strategy side of things, and Heather will, after that, take over the compliance side. So let's really take a step back, and think about what it means to exist as a consumer brand today in 2025. You might start anywhere. It could be as simple as starting on D2C, on Instagram, on brick and mortar retail, or even Amazon itself. But where you start isn't really the issue. How you kind of connect those dots is what drives long-term growth. So let's take a look at this list here today. While we speak about, omni-channel strategy, these are just some of the platforms where you can kind of find your favorite brands, or if you're a founder, you're kind of thinking about all these different channels. Here we can see, brands kind of start with D2C. They can then go explore sort of loyal community sort of events with their core focus groups. Also create focus groups in the beginning to kind of get feedback about their products and sort of create relevant touch points with, your potential customers. A lot of brands these days also collaborate with brands of all levels, not only in sort of their niche, but, horizontal and vertical categories to kind of raise awareness. Another sort of great platform for health and beauty brands, especially, has increasingly become like subscription platforms. So this can be anywhere from FabFitFun to TheraBox to Ipsy for some of beauty brands to really drive that long-term value for the brand. A lot of brands also traditionally kind of start off with retail. So that can be like regional and national retail partnerships. So anything from the grocery stores that you see for food and bev brands to Sephora and Ulta. Um, as we all know, brands nowadays are being discovered primarily through social platforms like TikTok. So that serves as a great discovery sort of engine as well. And then we see like e-commerce marketplaces such as Amazon kind of amplify that trust. So at the end of the day, Amazon doesn't kind of compete with DSC. It really complements it. And in fact, most of the brands that we work with also kind of treat Amazon as a holistic channel to kind of drive that growth. Cool. So Yeah, I think why Amazon kind of matters, even if you're D2C first. So I know a lot of consultants and even founders, still treat Amazon sort of like an optional channel. And also, honestly, that's right up to a certain point of scale as well. But I would say, like, if you figure out your brand messaging, found product market fit, and kind of are serious about scale, Amazon definitely helps you sort of get there. In recent news with kind of Touchland getting acquired, we've seen how Amazon was definitely a significant channel for them in terms of total revenue, what kind of helped them get their EBITDA goals and sort of that EBITDA multiple. So definitely sort of an important platform, right? So we've seen 70% of product searches kind of start on Amazon. Nowadays Amazon isn't just sort of a sales platform; it's where people are sort of going to start their shopping journey. Typing various types of keywords, and really just discovering, a lot of products. Even if someone sort of, starts shopping or sees the product on TikTok, they're still checking and kind of going to Amazon first. So that means either your brand shows up there or, a competitor does. And that sort of translates into the second quadrant that we see. Amazon does offer sort of instant credibility. Let's say an emerging brand starts, investing in TikTok or Instagram or any sort of influencer campaigns. What we really see is that while that offers such a great credibility point, we also see some of those branded traffic and like PR articles go towards Amazon. So definitely something to think about, depending on your stage of growth, your presence there. And then obviously if you have reached like a mature point of scale, how you're kind of showing up for these potential customers who are coming to look for your brand, whether it's through branded campaigns or, more. um, you know, Amazon can actually become also 30 to 70% of total brand revenue. Even those brands that kind of start off with D2C, Amazon quickly kind of takes over. And I know a lot of founders are kind of also worried about cannibalization and how kind of that affects that, which is definitely something that we can chat more about. But yeah, I think it's like definitely helpful to keep in mind how much of an impact it can have, not only towards, just treating it as one channel, but at the overall brand P&L. And yeah, also I think one of the great ways that I have seen, over the past few years is how retail buyers look at your Amazon as well. Um, Common misconception is that, if you are on Amazon, you can't be on Sephora or Ulta. But honestly, it kind of helps you also transfer some of those learnings. You can try to, look into Amazon to see what your state level sales data looks like. Where are your shoppers coming from, and those sort of data points can also help you inform where you need to be, and show up for your customer. So yeah, I think looking at it at a high level, whether you're thinking about scale, retail, or sort of just improving your credibility, Amazon really helps you sort of get there. But it's also not just about, having a couple of listings, but how you're kind of connecting that entire strategy together. So yeah, my next slide will kind of talk more about that. Yeah, so I think the real drivers of Amazon growth, I really want this slide to sort of be, quick takeaways for, founders, marketing consultants or investors out there to how to kind of analyze a brand's presence on Amazon, and what growth levels you can actually take to sort of achieve that, year over year growth. So it doesn't Amazon growth actually doesn't just come from one level. It really comes from how everything works together. So let's break them down. Kind of going clockwise and starting with P&L. P&L analysis here. I think that's probably the most important takeaway here, which is that the foundation of being on Amazon is just knowing your product's unit economics. If you kind of haven't calculated your contribution margin after, the platform fees that Amazon has, the FBA costs, shipping, storage, all those sort of operational costs that hit your P&L, you will not know what your ad metrics even need to be. You wouldn't know what to go chase after, kind of leading to a slow burn on the P&L. So building a P&L to track your monthly, sales, profitability is sort of my biggest takeaway from this graphic, and creating that top-down level strategy for any brand that you own right now. Next, going into sort of listing optimization. Being on Amazon is also realizing that your individual listing is kind of your storefront. So unlike D2C, when people actually land on your website, customers find you on Amazon through one product. They'll look at the hero image, the title, the price, and decide to click. That's the landing page that they land on, which is basically your listing. This can be your hero product, which kind of drives traffic to some of the other products. It kind of takes them to the storefront, which is similar to your D2C website. But knowing that each listing should be viewed as a landing page, like how you view the website as a landing page, is really just a great way to kind of kickstart your growth. And that can mean everything from focusing on copy, keywords, design, just making sure all of that sort of reflects the brand voice, which would then lead to conversion. And I think that's where most of the brands sort of leave money on the table as well. I think just going along those lines as well, on a listing level, I think content strategy comes out to be super important as well. So brands often obviously, sort of invest in influencer campaigns, Shopify website redesigns also often go into rebranding and just kind of develop on that. So it's kind of sequencing your content from the customer journey and how your brand voice reflects on Amazon itself. So for a beauty brand, it may look something like making sure that the founder story is sort of a part of what differentiates you from the competitors in sort of mainstream affordable sort of products in the market. What the main mission of the brand is, sort of ingredient call outs as well has turned out to be, a great lever for increasing conversion rate. In today's time, a lot of, let's say health and beauty brands, focus on the fact that they're either clean beauty or they're vegan or some sort of, call outs there, but how we sort of giving that credibility. So that can be through marketing claims and certifications, which obviously Heather can kind of touch more upon as well. But using that sort of element to stand out through your listings, how you sort of communicate your UVP as well. There's a sea of competitors out there, especially in health, beauty, food, and beverage, just everyday new competition kind of arising. So how do you sort of communicate that unique value proposition? Um, and content strategy can also mean everything from improving how your other products show up, and how the brand values show up as well. So using a lot of lifestyle photography as well has definitely been something that ends up converting. Moving on the clockwise direction, PPC advertising. So I think having discussed the first three levels, there's a common misconception that everything on Amazon starts with ads. Really, ads only work if you are retail ready. Sort of this concept that your listing has, certain amount of reviews, at least 30 to 50 reviews to sort of appear as a validated product. You have a strong listing, you have sort of promotional or pricing in place, and just having these levers all together so that every dollar spent actually shows results. Because let's be real, advertising costs have only gone up, not only on Amazon, but on Meta and every other platform as well. So making sure that listings are sort of retail ready before we go ahead and start putting dollars assigned to it. And in terms of advertising metrics, like there's definitely a lot of them to track in D2C and Meta campaigns. On Amazon, what I think has been sort of the best lever to tap into has always been TACOS, which is total advertising cost of sales. That has actually turned out to be a better metrics than, let's say, ROAS, which is just return on ad spend. What you want to see is how you're sort of tracking with organic versus paid ratios. Where's your growth really coming from? you know, is branded traffic converting, and sort of looking into those levels. Um, Moving to sort of inventory, right? Like if if there's no inventory, there's no sales. But also keeping in mind that overstocking also affects margin. So kind of important to forecast all promotional events, whether it's Prime Day, Black Friday, and any sort of category trends as well. Going to sort of brand analytics, definitely an underutilized tool on Amazon, from finding keywords that convert on your audience to new to brand customer ratios to reorder rates. There's a lot of data to sort of tap into there as well. Promotional strategy is definitely something to keep in mind, whether it's, Prime Day, any sort of category trends, that definitely help. And doing so with having sort of an ad inventory strategy in place as well. And then last but not the least, real brands are sort of investing in an omni-channel level strategy, and how you use all of it together is key. Traffic from Meta and TikTok often spills over to Amazon all the time. So just sort of making sure that you have sort of a strategy to convert that. So I know that was a heavy slide. Definitely feel free to put down any comments in the streaming side of the slide. But yeah, just moving on to the next slide. Kind of wanted to take a pause here and sort of share some real learnings from the field over the years. This is where sort of everything I've spoken about kind of meets with execution, and just overall high level patterns I've seen play out again and again across the brands that we work with, and other brands that I've worked at in the past. So wins, high level wins to kind of consider how you're performing on Amazon, and are you tapping into all these levels. And the brands I've been on Amazon are the ones that, are thinking about it early, not sort of as an afterthought. So, we had like one supplement brand that actually built Amazon into their supply chain right from day one. So when retail conversations came up and they had already scaled on Amazon, they were already kind of set up for, compliance, logistics, having channel clarity, and kind of landing up in retail doors. Another brand sort of, was D2C first, doing really well, but Amazon was sort of disconnected. So making sure to sync up any sort of messaging content, and investing into sort of getting reviews early on across all platforms definitely helped. Having had a jump in sales and increasing the overall brand P&L as well. What I've also seen work is when brands have assigned hero SKUs across their catalog, that means that they can really invest into improving that one landing page, improving ad metrics for that particular SKU, and just really investing into that sort of product to then have traffic spill over to other products as well. So know what your hero product is and kind of invest there. If you have a wide catalog, dividing all of your SKUs into different sort of tiers is going to help you win as well. And then last but not the least, having visibility into your P&L is huge. Make sure to sort of have unit economics in place. I sort of attached a graphic. This is what sort of the usual costs on Amazon look like. And having sort of clarity into your sort of contribution margin will help you determine how much you actually have, money to go invest in ads and promotions if you want a desired set of profit. What to kind of avoid, I would say, you know, either sort of going all in into Amazon or not, realizing where you want the platform to be. Um, New brands often try to list too many SKUs at once, and what happens is when you don't have sort of hero strategy to the T, ad dollars sort of get wasted, and that can really slow down momentum and how the brand appears to be in front of customers, investors, retail buyers. So just having sort of that hero strategy up to the T. um, at the high level, when it comes to showing up on Amazon, a big part of it is getting page one visibility. And the only way that's possible is if we're looking into keyword trends on sort of, at least a monthly basis, and understanding what's currently converting, what the product is getting ranked for, where is there room to grow so that we don't lose just, you know, the potential to get discovered. And then last but not the least, the number one rule on Amazon always is to not go out of stock. So investing in having an inventory forecasting schedule, and just having, you know, an understanding of how many units need to be in Amazon at any particular time. My best sort of practice there is to always have 3 to 4 months of coverage, so that if there is a promotion event, or even if, let's say, the product sort of achieves virality, you know, there's enough inventory to always cover that and have units sent in. um, yeah, so I think that was a high level sort of field lessons from, you know, having managed a few brands on Amazon. Sort of moving to the next slide. Yeah, I think at a high level, these would be my 4 key takeaways for any sort of brand on Amazon, whether you're planning to launch, you already are live on the platform and kind of have a team managing it. At the early stages, you know, launching too early or too late on Amazon can definitely impact scale. When you're sort of investing into all levels outside Amazon, we do always see traffic come on there. So just making sure to have some sort of pulse on how the brand is performing, you know, at an omni-channel level. P&L really drives your strategy, understanding, you know, what the products and unit economics looks like in relation to Amazon operational costs. So, you know, like we spoke about, 15% of your ASP goes towards, you know, just being on Amazon. That's like the standard rate. Around 20 to 30% can easily become sort of operational costs. So that's anywhere from FBA fees, which is just having your product sent into Amazon and then shipping them, and then also storage fees. So that kind of covers sort of the operational cost. That can easily be between 35 to 50%, depending on product size, weight, and all sorts of, you know, metrics there. So understanding what your gross margin looks like, the Amazon operational cost, to then understand the contribution margin, um, and then taking into account what an ad cost would be. Best practices are for, you know, brands that are launching on Amazon, definitely having some room there in the beginning to go invest for the first 2 months. In a steady state scenario, you know, tacos can be anywhere from 10 to 20%, depending on the category and sort of product you fall into. Also realizing that everyone does check Amazon. So, you know, if the brand is sort of going into fundraise, you know, trying to get investors on board, a lot of brands also sort of get into or try to invest in PR. And a lot of PR firms as well like having, you know, product pages that can be taken to Amazon because of the referral bonus that Amazon has. So keeping in mind that it does appear as a credibility test. And then last but not the least is the real value comes from having everything work together. So sort of the graphic we went through, real growth is only going to come with ads, listing, inventory, SEO, all sorts of operations and channels work together. And that's when, you know, I've seen brands really succeed and find that level of growth. Um, yeah, so I think that was sort of my, you know, rundown of what it takes for brands to win on Amazon today. Um, Before I sort of pass it on to Heather, who has a lot to kind of share on the compliance and FDA side, any questions that, you know, anyone attending wants to pop in the comments, happy to sort of answer them. Great question, Christopher. So I think it can be viewed two ways, right? So starting on Amazon before D2C as an emerging brand, I think with competition constantly rising, I always recommend that brands find some sort of footing, whether it's D2C, whether it's retail, you know, brick and mortar, to really understand if they have a validated product to begin with. Amazon is definitely a channel which requires initial investment, whether it's through sending inventory into Amazon. There's obviously 50 to 100 units at minimum that you kind of need to send. You're investing in Wine, which is a program that allows people to leave reviews on Amazon. You're also then going to invest in ads. That comes out to be, at minimum 3 to 5K at a very base range, even before you maybe have a strong footing on Amazon. So, and the way that you win on Amazon is obviously having positive reviews. That's key. So I would actually say if you're a totally new brand, make sure to have focus groups, sort of some level of success on the D2C or the retail front before you kind of go and explore and invest in Amazon.
I was going to ask you a quick question, Sonia. In terms of reviews, I get this question from clients pretty often. Is there anything you can do about bad reviews on Amazon?
So it goes both ways, right? So I think I get a lot of questions for reviews as well. So let's maybe break down reviews as a whole. Initially, when a brand launches on Amazon, the only way they can get reviews today is through the Wine program. The maximum amount of reviews you can get is 30. Over the years, that policy has sort of changed. So I think it was before 2020 or even prior to that, where a lot of brands who have been mature and like are on Amazon today were actually able to buy reviews. So Amazon came knocking down at that, and that cannot be unfortunately done today. So you have to start from scratch. Um, in terms of getting review velocity to even begin with, only let's say 3 to 5% of customers actually end up leaving reviews. So early on, we have to kind of invest in a lot of sales to actually sort of get that momentum going. And to set up those systems in place, you can use the Amazon review request feature, which kind of goes directly into the inbox of customers, incentivizing them to sort of leave a review. That's how you get reviews in the first place, I think, to sum it up. In terms of bad reviews, there's a few ways to go about it. When you get a bad review on Amazon, they actually let you sort of speak to the customer, versus in a positive review instance, you actually don't get the channel of communication opened up. So let's say someone leaves a 1-star review saying that the product doesn't open or doesn't work. You can sort of send them a text giving them instructions, um, to be like, hey, this is how you need to use it, and sort of wait honestly to see if they potentially change their review. Also being very careful with the language and the text that you do send them, because Amazon is very stringent on their sort of policies there. So either you wait, give them instructions, or you can try to report the review, sort of open cases as well with Amazon directly. You can also then report them as like a normal customer on the profile as well. So these are three sort of ways that I see you can address bad reviews. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it that you can do. And if the review doesn't get taken down at that time, then I think the best way is to sort of focus on getting some positive reviews.
Yeah,
And
counteract
yeah,
the bad reviews a little bit.
yes, I kind of
I agree.
adjust the ratings a little bit, and that can be, there's ways to do that. And I think one of the ways sometimes brands do that is, I think, based on Christopher's question, is like tapping into the audience that they have on D2C, the email lists that you don't get on Amazon. Tap into your Shopify sort of, or website ecosystem to, incentivize them to buy products on Amazon. Also be very careful with that. But yeah, I think that's a way to maybe counteract some of those bad reviews.
All right, we have one other question around what's the name of the company for reviews?
So there's no technical company that sort of gives you reviews, but I spoke about Wine, which is sort of a program within the Amazon Seller Central account itself, where you can quickly enroll into it when you launch a new product. Before you achieve 10 reviews, you can quickly enroll into the program. It sort of takes like 5 seconds. And what Amazon does is then sends free product to these customers who would then leave a review. Also keeping in mind, like, reviews can be positive or negative from that. Like, it's not necessary that because it's a free product, someone's going to leave a positive review. So yeah, always having a validated product obviously gives you some level of confidence that it's going to be more or less positive. But yeah, wine is a program that emerging indie brands can sort of tap into to get those early reviews. And
Love that.
in terms of in tracking your review systems early on, Helium 10 and sort of these software tools can also help you, send the reviews and have a tracking dashboard in place.
That's great. I think that's all the questions we can take for the moment. Sanya, thank you so much. That was very in-depth, and I'm sure we're going to have more questions that pop in. In the meantime, I'm going to take over the compliance side, and because we don't have too much time, but I want to make sure I don't get you guys out late. All right, so people probably are wondering on this, and I hope you're not going to drop off at this point, because compliance really, I think, goes hand in hand. What Sanya was talking about is how to keep you, make you successful on Amazon and grow your brand. Mine is how to keep your listings from being pulled, which I think is just as important of a strategy. So I just wanted to go over first kind of some of the objectives that I have, hopefully that I can teach you and that you will learn about Amazon and compliance and kind of why they go together. So first is why FDA oversight is shifting onto e-commerce platforms. Obviously, there's a rise in e-commerce, but there are some reasons and some things that FDA has been doing, updating themselves, which tends to be a little slower with the federal government, but they're doing it for sure. Trends in FDA warning letters and their impact on sellers. That's a really important point. How Amazon is mirroring FDA enforcement in its seller policies. So that's kind of that domino effect that's happening between FDA and Amazon. What Amazon's new pre-listing testing and labeling requirements are. So this is really important to brands so they can understand whether you're just starting out or you plan to add additional listings, so that you can understand what these new requirements are. So I'm going to go over some of those. And then finally, I have to leave you with some actionable insights and some nuggets you can take with you. So some practical compliance strategies to keep your listings live, which is what we all want, right? We wouldn't be on Amazon otherwise. We want to make sure those listings stay up. So first, we're going to talk about FDA warning letters. This is something, obviously, I hate to see my clients receive, but I do love answering them and kind of sticking it to the federal government from time to time. It can be fun. So FDA warning letters are essentially issued to companies who break the law, don't comply with regulations. And I guess you're probably wondering, like, what does FDA have to do with Amazon? How are they able to basically have jurisdiction over Amazon? So Amazon is not considered a passive platform. It actively stores and ships regulated goods. And the FDA does hold it liable under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act's interstate commerce provisions. So for a long period of time, and the reason I'm saying rising, this actually just started within the past few years, Amazon being issued warning letters directly from the FDA. There was a long period where Amazon was kind of getting by without agency action, and FDA was really just focusing on the brands themselves. And now they're kind of honing in on Amazon. So this rise in warning letters, like I mentioned before, it's kind of created this domino effect where because FDA is coming down on Amazon, now Amazon, this has resulted in them creating stricter compliance policies. And a lot of that comes from, obviously, I'd like to think that it's just Amazon trying to, do the right thing. We'll just assume that, right? That they're trying to do the right thing. But at the end of the day, they are required by regulation when they respond to their warning letters to engage in some corrective actions. They need to take action to correct any non-compliance. So I imagine, and you'll see when you read through some of their new policies, it kind of goes straight from warning letter straight to corrective action. So you can see where Amazon is responding directly to the FDA action. On the next bullet, the third bullet there, I kind of tried to show you that domino effect. So what's happening with these warning letters, at least the ones that we've seen so far, there's not a ton of them, but again, we're just seeing a rise. So we're trying to follow the trend of what's happening. So essentially, the majority of these issues have been around non-compliant claims or ingredients. So what's happening is these products, which are essentially either food, supplement, cosmetics, they're in that realm, are then making claims that are considered drug claims. So drug claims are anything that are, they're basically any marketing that is claiming that the product can mitigate, prevent, cure, any diseases or conditions. And so because these products are making those claims, or in some cases, ingredients are considered drug ingredients. So for example, if you have a cosmetic that then contains salicylic acid, that now turns it into a drug product. So what's happening in a lot of these letters is either the claims are turning them into a drug product. So the claims can either be something like cures cancer, which is very obviously a drug claim, or it can be a little more nuanced, something like describing eczema without saying eczema, but including all of the symptoms can still be considered an implied drug claim. So that's what Amazon is looking at. So anybody on this webinar right now that has a product where you're maybe going along that line of what's considered a drug claim, maybe some nuance, it's really important to keep that in mind, that is now under the scope of what FDA is enforcing against. So what's happening is then those claims would automatically turn that product. So let's say it's intended to be a cosmetic. It now has a drug claim. FDA considers it now a new drug. New drugs, as you probably already know, have to get FDA approval. And because those products are not approved by the FDA in advance, Amazon is now distributing an unapproved new drug. So that's essentially what these warning letters are saying. And what I also wanted to bring up is it's not only Amazon that are getting these letters directly, but even before that started, brands are receiving warning letters that are having their Amazon listing cited. So FDA in their warning letters tends to include content from Amazon listings and claims that are being made. So it's something to be aware of, that it can actually come from multiple angles, right? So a lot of the time when Amazon receives a warning letter, you'll see 3 warning letters. You'll see one to Amazon, one to the brand, and maybe one to a retailer like Walmart, we saw in one case. So FDA is now sending a message. They are going to hold everyone in the supply chain accountable for those non-compliance issues. So this is just a breakdown of the warning letters. And I think what's an interesting question, and I had to look this up in advance of this webinar, because I did ask that question initially, why did it start around 2022? I do know that I remember seeing a trend in Amazon being kind of under the FDA spotlight starting around COVID. Even though the FBA program has been around since 2006, it really didn't ramp up until, let's say, 2010s, and then Prime came out, so it still was growing. But COVID was just another level of all of us sitting back in our sweatpants and ordering stuff off the internet. So that then brought Amazon directly into the crosshairs for the FDA. And so you can see, as I mentioned on the last slide, that a lot of these examples are products that maybe were a cosmetic or a supplement, but for some reason, either through claims or in some cases through drug ingredients being included, FDA considered those to be unapproved new drugs. So, and actually they just received a warning letter as recently as April 17th. That was just released on the 29th. I think they knew my webinar was coming up, so they wanted to give me some fresh content for it. All right, so now we're gonna dig into Amazon's new seller requirements. And some of these are very new, some of them have been around a little while, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys were made aware. So one of the big ones is third-party testing and FDA compliant labeling for dietary supplements. So effective in April of last year, supplement categories that are deemed high risk. So these are things like weight management, sexual enhancement, sports nutrition, joint health. Those products must be verified annually by an ISO accredited organization, so an ISO accredited lab. The labs that they have listed are Eurofins, UL, and NSF. Those are some of the largest supplement testing labs, so that's probably why they included those as examples. In addition, on the FDA compliant labeling, which it's interesting that we're saying FDA compliant labeling, I would just like if I could send any message to the people on this webinar, the number one message would be, if you get your products FDA compliant, you are pretty much secure that you're going to meet Amazon's requirements. That's just a fact. So what Amazon is now requiring of supplements, for example, is that they're made in a GMP compliant facility, that they contain only declared ingredients and contain no declared drug actives. Like I alluded to, that is directly coming from those warning letters, right? Where for example, there were products that contained drug actives that were not listed on the label, which obviously can be very harmful to consumers. So the fact that they're calling that out specifically, you can see that was probably part of their corrective action plan they submitted to FDA. And then finally, FDA labeling rules. So no disease claims, as I alluded to, disease or drug claims. So those are already required by FDA at a base level. And so Amazon is just checking your work, right? They're making sure that you do meet those requirements before you can list with them. There's also the manager compliance documentation upload. So this is a feature. There's always been some requirements from Amazon to include compliance documentation, but I think they've definitely ramped it up. So they want to see test reports, certificates of analysis, label images, sometimes certifications, and that's required to be uploaded to that dashboard in order for your listings to remain active. The next one is ongoing category restrictions. So I've seen as recently as a couple weeks ago on the Amazon Seller Central board, they were talking about some certain dietary supplement categories that are temporarily closed to new seller applications. And this is just something that I think is kind of moving back and forth as they update their compliance policy. So it's just something to be aware of. The next one is MOCRA product safety reports for cosmetics. So this is for my cosmetic people in the webinar. Basically, if you're not familiar with MOCRA and you're in the cosmetic industry, you definitely need to know about MOCRA. So MOCRA is the Modernization of Cosmetics Regulation Act, and this was just passed back in 2022 by Congress. This is the largest update to cosmetics regulation since the Food Drug Cosmetic Act of 1938. And I love to say that statement because I get lots of gasps from people when I make that statement. They can't believe that cosmetic regulations have not been updated since 1938, but it is a fact. And here we are. So what Amazon is doing is essentially just trying to align with the FDA requirements. They want all cosmetic listings to be backed by certain data. So having ingredient safety assessments, stability data, adverse event reporting, contacts, these are all required under MOCRA anyway. And in addition, Amazon requires proof of registration in order to approve your listing. So all of that has to be done under MOCRA. Again, I'm going to keep like hammering in the same concept. If you're FDA compliant, you're most likely going to comply with the majority of things that Amazon is now requiring. The next one I want to talk about is a recall policy. And I'm going to share a quick story because I became aware of this recall policy in real time. I was handling a pretty massive recall for a dietary supplement client, and they were selling on Amazon, and we were kind of getting all our ducks in a row. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the client just starts getting phone calls from all of their customers. Amazon now directly contacts 100% of affected customers via email and inside banners. They essentially say that this is, for to ensure more reliable delivery of recall instructions and to improve consumer safety. That's great for consumers, but for the brands, this can be really messy. So in the case of my client, Amazon just started sending out all of these messages and even included some customers of products that were not part of the recall. So when you have a third party like Amazon handling a recall for you, it can be a little scary. So I think it's really important um, that you stay on top of, have your own recall policy, be in contact with Amazon about what's going on, to make sure they have all of the right information so that you're not going to be affected. Because of course, recalls hurt your brand reputation. So that's really important to note. And then finally, if we have any medical device people on the webinar, enhanced medical device listing checklist. This is in progress, I believe. I don't think it's been released yet. But basically, there's an updated checklist for FDA regulated medical devices that's in Seller Central. Sellers have to affirm compliance with QMS, which is quality management systems. That's just basically your manufacturing practices. 510K status. So if your device is required to be cleared in advance, you need to have all of that documentation. I think that's a major upgrade for Amazon because that, like I said, all of these things are already FDA required. And then finally, the labeling has to be compliant prior to listing. So that's just an update on some. I probably missed some, but at least to give you a good idea of some of the updates. And this is consistently being updated with new requirements on I would say on a pretty consistent basis. So it's good to stay up to date with that. Next is risk and seller impact. I wanted to include some what I would consider risky behaviors for CPG products on Amazon. These are just things that I've seen that tend to come up pretty consistently with my clients. So in the food and supplements category, what's really hot? Functional foods. And so those kind of toe the line between a supplement and a food and a conventional food. And so what usually happens is those brands are trying to talk about the benefits, and that ends up sometimes being therapeutic claims, which are drug claims. So definitely be aware if you're in the functional food space to be cautious of that. I've definitely seen Amazon pull listings for that. Women's health, actually, a few of these are examples of clients that I've worked with where their listings have been pulled. So just to let you know, these are not made up scenarios. A lot of these are actually real scenarios that have happened. Like I said, next is women's health, discussing benefits that are actually conditions, things like hormone health. And there's a lot of that happening on Amazon, and Amazon has kind of that category in their line of sight. So it's good to know that that's something you might want to look at if you're in the women's health space. Food and supplements making mood claims. So mood claims can go from an everyday mood situation to a drug claim pretty quickly. So that's good to understand because a lot of brands are now trying to talk about how the product can help with moods. Not testing for identity of ingredients. This is a requirement for supplements. If you are a brand owner and your manufacturer is not doing that, I highly recommend they do. This is how a lot of these brands got into trouble for having undeclared drug ingredients. So I can tell you an example of a client that was selling a supplement. They did not do testing of identity for their ingredients, and there was a male enhancement drug in their supplement product, and they didn't even know it. So it's really important to do that testing. On the cosmetic side, obviously having drug claims, having structure function claims, there are so many claims out there that are so often used on the cosmetic side, things like hyperpigmentation that you see everywhere that are just not allowed. And they've been allowed to kind of skate by because FDA has not regulated these terms as heavily, right? Cosmetics have not been as heavily regulated, but now with MOCRA, they are going to start being more heavily regulated. So definitely be aware, drug claims, structure function claims, not allowed on cosmetics. It needs to be claims that are focused on the way the skin looks, the appearance of. There's a reason you've got that really awful, wordy marketing claim of helps with the appearance of wrinkles, it's because you have to focus on appearance. You cannot focus on structure or function of the body. And then finally, including drug ingredients on the cosmetic side. So products with SPF, acne products, those are, or eczema products, those are all considered drug ingredients and will automatically make your product a drug. It will no longer be a cosmetic. So be aware that if you have any ingredients that are considered OTC drug ingredients, that needs to be regulated as a drug and not as a cosmetic. It has very different requirements. All right, so this is the good stuff. This is where I scare everybody and tell you what is the worst that could happen. I get that question all the time. I like to evaluate client situations based on a scale of risk. Here are some of the risks if you are not compliant on Amazon. So there's some of these are Amazon specific. Some of them kind of go outside of that. So one is listing deactivation and removal. So Amazon can automatically deactivate your listing if it fails the manager compliance checks. So if it has non-compliant labels, missing test reports, it's really hard to get these back up. I have a lot of clients, especially in terms of the clients I deal with Amazon related issues. When they get their listings deactivated, I had a client that was making $50,000 a month on this one product. That the listing was taken down. It took us almost 6 months to get it back up. And that is a ton of revenue lost. So it's really important that you think about compliance on the front end. Next is account suspension or termination. This is in like really severe cases where there's serious or persistent violations. So it's really important to, obviously keep on top of compliance, making sure that you don't have consistent violations. And once you're terminated, reinstatement is really, really difficult, and Amazon will require extensive corrective action plans. Dealing with Amazon, if you've ever had to deal with their teams, their regulatory teams, it can be really tough talking to the right person. So I think it's important that we try to prevent, right? Next is financial losses and fees. So you're still on the hook for storage, removal, disposal fees for any products Amazon removes under any compliance or recall actions. So, your wallet will definitely suffer in that case. And recalls in general, they're already expensive, just from like let's say from a general perspective, but then on top of it, dealing with Amazon, that's also going to add to your cost for recalls. Regulatory enforcement action. So like I said, you can get a double whammy of dealing with Amazon and then also with FDA, getting warning letters. FDA can seize non-compliant inventory. And essentially, you can also be issued civil monetary penalties or injunctions if your products are deemed adulterated or misbranded. So they work hand in hand. You cannot look at either one in a vacuum. Next is civil liability and product liability exposure. So this is outside of the scope of specifically Amazon, but it's something to always keep in mind. I never like to look at things in a vacuum. I like to look at them holistically. If a consumer is harmed, let's say there's an allergic reaction, adverse event by a product you've listed, and you have not done the proper testing or your labeling is wrong, you can face direct lawsuits. There are, I don't want to say evil attorneys, but there are some pretty gnarly attorneys out in California, in New York, that are just sitting around waiting for the opportunity to sue you. I have dealt with these situations, and it's not fun. And usually you'll get a demand letter asking for money. Even if you don't go through litigation, you still are probably going to have to shell out a good amount of money to get rid of that lawsuit. Next is brand reputation damage. This is obviously really important. And I think Sonia talked about this, with the, talking about reputation and how important it is. You want consumer trust. You don't want negative reviews. And obviously, anytime you have issues with your listing, you're making claims that can't be backed up, then it's going to give you the possibility of brand reputation and damage. In addition, when FDA requires a recall, you're also going to deal with press coverage. When I work on recalls for clients, I am required by FDA to submit a press release to the general press, and then that goes out to all the local stations. So again, not just on Amazon, but elsewhere, you can really have some negative effects. Next is ineligibility for Prime and the buy box. So non-compliant listings can have issues qualifying for Prime shipping. I don't know about you guys. I usually filter by Prime because it's really important to me that I get my stuff quickly. So that can have a really negative impact on sales velocity. And then the buy box is, the buy now, where you click buy now. That can also be, affected as well. And then finally, supply chain disruption. So Amazon's inventory holds or returns can create some issues downstream. So it's really important as well, to stay compliant so that it doesn't affect supply chain and inventory. And finally, some nuggets of wisdom, best practices, and some next steps. So number one, conduct pre-listing FDA compliance audits. Not that I want this to be self-serving, whether it's me, whether it's another company, you should definitely speak to an FDA person that can help review your product labeling, your marketing, and that extends to everything, not just Amazon. That's all your social media. FDA has teams that scour the internet and look for this stuff. So it's really important that you've got everything ready to go before you launch and before you put your stuff on Amazon. And again, Amazon compliance mirrors FDA requirements. If you're FDA compliant, you're going to meet Amazon's requirements. Next, because of some of those testing requirements and because the testing, so this is on the supplement side, because the testing is required and because it takes a good amount of time for them to turn around the testing, I think it's good to partner with these labs in advance. You can reach out to any of those three. They're all really good labs. I've worked with all three of them to get started so that you've got that ready to go. Next, keep full records. You should always have really good record keeping in general, again, from an FDA perspective. And then when Amazon asks you for that stuff, you've already done your homework, right? If you've got your ducks in a row for FDA, you've got the same documentation available for Amazon. So maintaining your certificates of analysis, lab reports, and then making sure that you're uploading all of that into Amazon. And then finally, monitoring FDA warning letters. It's super easy to remember. Warning letter Wednesday. So FDA releases all new warning letters on Wednesdays. You can sign up for that on fda.gov and just stay abreast of what's going on. And then also on the Amazon policy updates. So making sure you're looking at the Amazon Seller Central announcements. This is really important because it's constantly being updated. So just staying up to date with that. All right, guys. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking to you guys and teaching you a little bit about strategy and compliance and how important these things are and how they work hand in hand. Like, who would have thought that they flow so well together and they're so important to think of together? I don't think we have any more time for questions. Sania, do you have any quick questions? You can ask anything you've been thinking of in terms of the compliance side.
No, I'm
Before we
good. I
go.
mean, my biggest takeaway was warning letter Wednesdays. What a term! And love that brands can sort of track that and just keep track of Amazon policies as well, as you mentioned in the end. So yeah, sounds good.
That's
Yeah, thank you
awesome.
so much everyone for joining.